Good day everyone, my name is Rica Mae Matbagon from Bael 2I, and today my groupmates and I are going to talk about the relationship between stylistics and syntax and what are the importance of syntax and stylistics and its contribution. But first let me define what syntax is. So what is syntax? So syntax is also defined as the proper order of words in a phrase or sentence. Syntax is a tool used in writing proper grammatical sentences, and also the complexity of a writer's or speaker's sentences creates a formal or informal level of diction that is presented to its audience, which will be further discussed by one of our members later on. And also, syntax is one of the major components of grammar. Because of syntax, we're able to understand a certain sentence effectively. Because, according to its definition, syntax is the proper order of words in a phrase or sentences. Syntactic rules. English parts of speech often follow ordering patterns in sentences and clauses, such as compound sentences are joined by conjunctions like and or but, or that multiple adjectives such as number, size, color, take for example, 6 small green chairs, modifying the same noun follow a particular order according to their class. The rules of how to order words help the language parts make sense. Sentences often start with a subject, followed by a predicate, and contain an object or a complement, which shows what's being acted upon. Take this sentence for example. Beth slowly ran the race in wild, multicolored flip-flops. The sentence follows an SVO or the subject verb object pattern, right? Beth ran the race. Adverbs and adjectives take their places in front of what they're modifying. Slowly run, wild, and multicolored flip-flops. The object the race follows the verb run, and the prepositional phrase in wild, multicolored flip-flops starts with the preposition in. And that's only the introduction in our topic, and for us to have an in-depth knowledge about our assigned topic, here's my group mate starting with Miss Jumawan.
Let's move on to the topic syntax versus diction and formal versus informal. So diction, it is not new to us since if someone speaks in front or write about an essay, we usually look into their diction. Now, let me give you the definition of diction. It refers to the style of writing or speaking that someone or a specific person uses. In short, it is their choices of words. Whereas syntax, it is the order in which the words are arranged in a spoken stylistic syntax of the English language. So stylistic syntax is aimed at finding out what expressive value a syntactical unit possesses. So stylistically neutral sentence pattern is spelled as pod or SPOD. So number one, the reduction. So when we say reduction, it is the act of reducing or decreasing, right? So the reduction of the sentence pattern that lies in the deliberate omission of obligatory elements of the sentence structure. So example of this are ellipsis, apostropasis, nominative sentences, of course, incomplete sentences, and ascenditone. So now we will move on to the redundancy. So when we say redundancy, it is like repetition or adding some words. So the redundancy of the sentence pattern that results from the addition of some elements or their deliberate repetition. So examples of this are repetition, of course, enumeration, polysyndeton, emphatic constructions, parenthetical clauses or sentences. Number three, the violation of the grammatically fixed word order within a sentence or a deliberate isolation of some parts of the sentence. So examples of this are stylistic inversion, syntactical split, suspense, and detachment. Finally, the shifts in syntactic meaning which results from changes in the use
Next, stylistic properties of syntactic constructions based on the reduction of the sentence structure is ellipsis. Ellipsis is the absence of one or both principal parts. It is either the subject or the predicate in a syntactical construction. The missing parts might be clearly understood from the context or are implied by the situation, and it is omitted by the speaker intentionally in cases when they are semantically redundant. These are some of the examples. Next is nominative sentences. Nominative sentences are one-member sentences with a noun, a prepositional noun phrase, or an adverb. In contrast with the elliptical sentences, they have only one principal part, with or without words modifying it. Example, an aching business. So it considered as a prepositional noun phrase. So next is the incomplete sentences. Incomplete sentences are characterized by the absence of auxiliary elements in the sentence, such as the auxiliary verbs, articles, prepositions, and conjunctions. All these elements are often dropped in informal oral communication. Example, he said he was going to write them Monday. So, the preposition on before the word Monday was omitted. Next is aposiopesis. It is when a sentence is purposefully left incomplete or cut off. It is caused by the speaker's inability or the unwillingness to finish the utterance. For example, Are you and Paul? Another example is, it can't be. You don't mean. Last is the ascenditon. It is the deliberate avoidance of conjunctions used to connect sentence, clauses, or words. For example, friends for now, forever. So the conjunction and, which is supposedly written before the forever, or the word forever, is omitted in the sentence.
This is Gemal, Kylie, and I will continue the report. So the second one is the redundancy of the sentence pattern that results from the addition of some sentence elements or the deliberate repetition. So part of this one are the repetition, enumeration, polysyndeton, and empathic constructions. Stylistic properties of syntactic construction based on the redundancy of the sentence structure are the following. First is repetition. It is a reiteration of the same word or phrase to lay an emphatic stress on the certain parts of the sentence. Repetition is when words or phrases are repeated in a literary work. So there are common phrases in conversation and writing that contains repetition. Some familiar examples of repetition are the phrases time after time, boys will be boys, over and over, home sweet home, and hand in hand. There are different types of repetition. First one is anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of the first word or word group in several successive sentences, clauses, or phrases. So, example of anaphora is, it was better for him, better for common sense, better for. So the phrase better for was being repeated. The second type of repetition is epiphora. It is the repetition of a final word or word group. It is from Greek, which means bring to. This is the emphatic repetition of a word or phrase placed at the end of several sentences. So example is, I wake up and I'm alone, I walk around the valley and I'm alone, and I talk with people and I'm alone. The third type of repetition is the antidiphlosis, or the catch repetition. The last word or phrase of the first part of the utterance is repeated at the beginning of the next part, thus hooking two parts together. So an example of antidiphlosis is a sentence, all was old and yellow with decay, and decay was the smell and being of that room. So another example is, to the end of time, time is all we have. The next one is framing, or the ring repetition. The repetition of the same unit at the beginning and at the end of the utterance or paragraph. So an example of framing is, he ran away from the battle. He was an ordinary human being, but he didn't want to kill. and to be killed, so he ran away. He ran away was mentioned at the first part and was repeated again at the end part of the sentence. Chain repetition is based on an adipthesis is used several times in one utterance. So an example is a smile would come into Mrs. Pickwick's face, the smile extended into a laugh, the laugh into a roar, the roar became general. The second stylistic properties of syntactic constructions based on the redundancy of the sentence structure is enumeration. Enumeration is the repetition of homogeneous parts of the sentence aimed at emphasizing the whole utterance. An example of enumeration is, he had come near quietly and he leaned over the wire fence that protected her flower garden from cattle and dogs and chickens. What was highlighted in that sentence is the cattle and dogs and chickens. The third one is polysyndeton. It is much compounded. It is opposite to asyndeton and means a repetition of conjunctions in close succession which are used to connect sentences, clauses, or words and make the utterance more rhythmical. So the example of polysyndeton is the sentence, the horizon narrowed and widened and dipped and rose, and at all times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed trussed up in points like rocks. So what was being repeated in the sentence is the conjunction and.
In continuation with the stylistic properties of syntactic construction based on the redundancy of the sentence structure by Kylie Gemal is the emphatic constructions. Emphatic construction may intensify or contrast any part of a sentence, giving it an emotive charge or more prominence. The emphatic construction we do is used as predicate intensifier. The construction of it is somebody, it is something who, it is that intensifies the subject. The construction it is then that stresses the adverbial modifier of time. The construction of it is by, it is with, it is through something that makes prominent of the adverbial modifier of manner. Lastly, the construction of it is to that, it is something there that brings to the foreground the object of the sentence. Try to identify different emphatic constructions flashed on your screen. Let's take a look at these examples. The first example is, it was then that Brian had his first glimpse of a little cloaked man in a yellow hat. So, the emphatical construction, which is it was then that, stresses the adverbial modifier of time. Second example is, it was the horses he loved. He spoke little to the jockeys. So the emphatical construction there is the it was, and it intensifies the subject in the sentence. The third example is, I do knew it. So the emphatical construction I do is the predicate intensifier. The last example is, the evening it was Dave who read to the boys their bedtime story. So the emphatic construction it was intensifies the subject, which is Dave. Let's move forward to stylistic properties of syntactic construction based on the violation of grammatically fixed word order within a sentence. So first is the inversion. Inversion is the syntactic phenomenon of the intentional changing word order of the initial sentence. For example, the placing of an adjective after the noun it modifies, just like the form divine. So the adjective there is the divine, and it is placed right after the noun it modifies, such as the form. Another is a verb before its subject, just like came the noun. So the verb is came and it is written before the subject. Last example is a noun preceding its preposition, just like worlds between. So the preposition there is the word between, and it comes after the noun world. So the second violation is the separation. Separation or syntactical split is the splitting of a noun phrase by the attribute adjunct which is removed from the word it modifies. Stylistically, it is used to emphasize the phrase which was separated. Example, he had never seen the truth before about anything. So the phrase about anything there was separated in the sentence, and it was used to emphasize that he had never seen the truth before about anything.